The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for nearly a mile in every direction. Floating platforms held delegates from 800 different species. Some breathed oxygen. Others breathed methane or chlorine. A few didn't breathe at all. Crystal chandeliers the size of small moons hung from the ceiling, casting rainbow light across the assembly. This was the center of galactic civilization. This was where the fate of trillions was decided. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the speaking platform, her simple blue uniform looking almost plain compared to the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor worn by other delegates. She was 63 years old, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that had seen too many disappointments. Behind her sat the human delegation, 17 men and women who represented Earth and its 12 colony worlds. The vote had just concluded. The numbers floated in holographic display above the chamber. 847 against. 1 in favor. Humanity had lost. Again, the issue was simple. A species called the Drexy were dying. Their star was expanding, cooking their home world. 14 million survivors floated in space aboard old ships, looking for a new home. They had traveled for 6 years. They had asked the Galactic Council for help. They had asked for a small moon, an asteroid, anything where they could rebuild. The Council had said no. Hi, Commander Vreth of the Vorthani spoke from his floating platform. He was 8 feet tall, covered in black armor that was actually part of his body. His species had evolved for war. They were the military power of the galaxy, and they made sure everyone remembered it.
The Drexy
Have nothing to offer, Vreth announced. His voice was deep and cold. They have no technology we need, no resources we want, no military value. Taking them in would cost money. It would require space. It would bring problems. The Council has made the wise choice. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The crystalline Silith delegates chimed in harmony, their way of showing approval. The fungal Morith released spores of satisfaction. The insectoid Crix clicked their approval. Alina watched all of this with a still face. She had been a diplomat for 31 years. She had served on the Galactic Council for 18 of them. She had seen this exact scene play out dozens of times. A weak species needed help. The strong species said no. Humanity argued and pleaded and tried to find compromises. Sometimes they won small victories. Usually they lost. She thought about the Drexy ambassador she had met last week. His name was Torvith. His skin was like tree bark, rough and brown. His eyes were large and golden. He had shown her pictures of his grandchildren. 3 small beings who had been born on a refugee ship and had never known solid ground beneath their feet. He had cried when he talked about his homeworld, about the forests that were now ash, about the cities that had melted. Please, he had begged her. You are human. Your species understands. You help others? You always have. Please save my people, Lena had promised to try. She had given speeches. She had negotiated. She had called in favors from 100 species who owed humanity for past kindness. None of it had mattered. The vote was clear. The Drexy would receive no help. She stepped forward to the speaking platform. The chamber fell quiet. Humans were strange to the galaxy. They were young, having only discovered faster-than-light travel 300 years ago. They were weak, with no natural weapons or armor. They were small, controlling only 13 worlds in a galaxy of millions. But when a human spoke, other species listened. No one quite understood why. I have a statement to make on behalf of Earth and the United Human Colonies, Alina said. Her voice was calm, steady. For 300 years, humanity has served the Galactic Council. We have worked as diplomats, helping species who could not speak to each other find common ground. We have worked as engineers, solving problems that others could not solve. We have worked as doctors, healers, teachers, and builders. We have given everything we have to this institution. She paused. The chamber was completely silent. We asked for one thing in return. We asked the Council to care. To look at 14 million dying people and feel something. To recognize that the measure of a civilization is not its wealth or its weapons, but how it treats the weakest among it. High Commander Vreth laughed. It was an ugly sound. Sentiment. Human weakness. This is why your species will never be great. Lena did not respond to him. Instead, she reached up and removed the communication medallion from around her neck. This was the symbol of council membership. Every delegate wore one. It allowed instant translation between species. It marked the wearer as a voice in galactic affairs. She placed the medallion on the speaking platform. Earth and the United Human Colonies formally withdraw from the Galactic Council, she announced. Effective immediately. All human personnel will be recalled from council positions within 30 standard days. All treaties, trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts are hereby terminated. We will chart our own course from this day forward. For a moment, nothing happened. Then laughter began to spread through the chamber. The Vorsani shook with amusement. The Psyloth chimed in discordant mockery. Even the usually serious Cricks were clicking their mandibles in what passed for their species' sense of humor. High Commander Vreth leaned forward on his platform. Little humans, where will you go? Who will protect you? You need our supply routes, our technology, our markets. Without the council, you are nothing. Elena gathered her delegation with a glance. They rose from their seats, 17 humans standing straight and calm in a chamber full of ancient, powerful species that were laughing at them. We will manage, Elena said simply. She turned and walked toward the exit. Her delegation followed. The laughter continued behind them, echoing off the crystal chandeliers. Bouncing between the floating platforms, the Morith delegate released spores of contempt. Let them go. They were always too emotional, too focused on useless things like kindness and fairness. The council will be stronger without them. High Commander Vreth watched the humans leave. For just a moment, something flickered in his cold eyes. Not worry, exactly. He had conquered 12 star systems. He commanded a fleet of 10,000 warships. He had nothing to fear from a small, weak, emotional species that had just thrown away their only protection, and yet he remembered a human saying he had once heard. Something about being careful what you wish for. He pushed the thought away. The humans were gone. Good riddance. The galaxy would continue, as it always had, ruled by the strong. Serving the powerful, everything would be fine. Within a year, everything would collapse. 3 months after the humans left, the first problems appeared. They were small things at first. Easy to ignore. Easy to blame on bad luck or temporary confusion, but they kept growing. Counselor Sitha of the Silith was the first to truly understand what was happening. Her species was made of living crystal, beautiful and cold and very, very logical. They had always believed they were the true diplomats of the galaxy. They spoke with precision. They calculated optimal outcomes. They made decisions based on pure reason. But now she sat in a trade negotiation that had been going on for 16 days. 16 days to agree on the price of medical supplies. Before the humans left, such meetings took 2 hours at most. The problem was simple and terrible. The Vorthani delegate wanted respect. The Marath delegate wanted to feel important. The Crix delegate was insulted by something the Vorthani had said on day 3. Everyone was angry. Everyone was stubborn. No one would back down in the old days. A human would have walked between them. A human would have found the right words. They would have made a joke that everyone could laugh at. They would have suggested a break and talked to each delegate privately. They would have found some way to let everyone feel like they had one. Scytha had always thought. The humans were wasting time with such approaches. Now she realized the truth. The humans had been the glue that held everything together. Without them, the crystal halls of galactic diplomacy were cracking, 6,000 light years away. The great shipping lanes were falling into chaos. Portmaster Krell was a Vesani, a species that lived in water and breathed through gills. He had managed the shipping hub at Nexus Station for 40 years. Every day, 10,000 cargo ships passed through his station, carrying food and fuel and manufactured goods to 100 different worlds. The system had always worked perfectly. Ships arrived on schedule, cargo was sorted and sent to the right destinations. Nothing was lost. Nothing was late. Krell had always believed this was because of his own skill and the efficiency of the Sani management. He had been wrong. The system had worked because of a small team of human logistics, coordinators who had worked in a cramped office on level 47. There had been only 12 of them, handling millions of shipping routes. They had worked strange hours, often arguing loudly with each other over cups of a bitter drink they called coffee. Krell had never paid much attention to them. They were just humans. Not important. Now they were gone. Everything was breaking down. Ships waited at ports for clearance codes that never came. A cargo of fresh fish meant for the Vorthani homeworld sat in a warehouse for 3 weeks. Because no one could find the correct paperwork, medical supplies for a plague-stricken colony were sent to the wrong star system. Factories on 12 worlds shut down because small parts that no one had thought to reorder had run out. Krell worked 20-hour days trying to fix the chaos. He hired new coordinators from a dozen species. They were intelligent and hardworking, but they couldn't do what the humans had done. They couldn't see patterns in the chaos. They couldn't predict problems before they happened. They couldn't improvise solutions out of nothing. He sent a desperate message to Earth, asking if any of the human coordinators would return. The response came back within an hour. "We wish you well, but our people are needed at home now. We are sure you will figure it out." He never did. In the military command center of the Vorthani Empire, Admiral Kreth was facing a crisis that no weapon could solve. The Vorthani fleet was the most powerful military force in the galaxy. 10,000 warships, each one capable of destroying a planet. Their targeting systems were so advanced that they could hit a moving target from 3 light seconds away. Their predictive algorithms could calculate enemy movements before the enemy even decided to move. But the targeting systems had stopped updating, Admiral. Kreth had ordered his technical teams to fix the problem. They had studied the code for weeks. They could not understand it. The algorithms were too complex, too strange, too human. It turned out that a small team of human mathematicians had been maintaining the targeting systems for the past century. They had called it a fun side project. They'd improved the algorithms year after year, making them faster and more accurate. They had done this for free, simply because they enjoyed the challenge. No one had bothered to learn how their work functioned. Why would they? The humans were always there. The humans would always fix things. The humans would never leave. Admiral Kreth sent his best officers to study at human universities, hoping to learn their mathematical techniques. The humans politely refused. "We are focusing on our own priorities now," they explained. "We are sure your people can develop their own solutions." The Admiral stared at his targeting display, which was now 3 months out of date. His ships could still destroy planets. They just could not hit anything that was moving. The worst crisis came on the forest moon of Keth Prime. For 500 years, this small moon had been the source of a precious medicine called Vitalis. It came from a rare fungus that grew only in the moon's ancient forests. Half the galaxy depended on this medicine. It treated diseases that would otherwise be fatal. It extended life by decades. It was more valuable than gold. The fungus was delicate. It required exactly the right temperature, the right humidity, the right balance of nutrients in the soil. For 200 years, a human botanist named Dr. Sarah Chen had tended the forests. She had lived alone on the moon, studying the fungus, nurturing it, protecting it. When the humans withdrew from the council, Dr. Chen had tried to train replacements. She had offered to teach everything she knew. No one had been interested. The work was boring, they said. It was beneath them. Surely the fungus would take care of itself. 3 months after Dr. Chen left, the fungus began dying. By the time anyone noticed, it was too late. The infection spread through the forests like fire. Within weeks, 90% of the Vitalis supply was gone. Hospitals across the galaxy ran out of medicine. Patients who had been stable for years began dying. The council sent urgent messages to Dr. Chen, begging her to return. She responded with sadness, but firmness. "I offered to help. I offered to teach. You were not interested. Now I am growing food for Drexy refugees. That seems more important. Counselor Sitha finally understood the truth. She gathered the other senior council members for an emergency meeting. They floated on their platforms in the Great Hall, the same hall where they had laughed at the humans 3 months ago. "We made a mistake," Setha said. Her crystal voice rang through the chamber. "We thought the humans were weak because they cared about things we considered unimportant. We thought they were foolish because they helped others without expecting payment. We were wrong. They were the foundation, and we kicked them out." High Commander Vreth shifted uncomfortably in his armor. "What do you suggest we do?" Sitha had already composed a message to Earth. It was humble and apologetic. It offered favorable trade terms. It promised that the Drexy would be welcomed. It asked, very politely, if humanity would consider returning to the Council. The response came back the same day. It was only 4 words long. "We are busy. Good luck." And in the darkness of space, 14 million Drexy refugees continued drifting toward an uncertain future, wondering if anyone in the galaxy still cared. Whether they lived or died, someone did, but it was not the Council, the Drexy refugee. Fleet had been traveling for 7 years. Their ships were old and tired. Their engines ran on hope as much as fuel. Their people had watched their homeworld burn from the view screens, watched their forests turn to ash, watched everything they knew disappear into the expanding heat of their dying star. 14 million souls drifted through the cold darkness of space. They had asked every major power in the galaxy for help. They had begged the Vorsani for a small moon, any moon, where they could land and rebuild. The Vorthani had laughed. They had pleaded with the Silith for temporary shelter. The Silith had calculated the costs and found them too high. They had approached 30 different species. 30 times they had been told no. Now their supplies were running out. Their ships were failing. Their children were growing up knowing nothing but metal walls and recycled air. Ambassador Torvith had stopped sleeping. He spent his nights staring at star charts, looking for somewhere, anywhere, that might take his people in. Then they reached the edge of human. Space Ambassador Alina Vasquez was waiting for them, not with a fleet of warships, not with demands or conditions. She came in a small diplomatic shuttle, alone except for a pilot. Her shuttle docked with Torvat's flagship, and she walked through the airlock with a smile on her face. "Ambassador Torveth," she said, extending her hand in the human greeting. "On behalf of Earth and the United Human Colonies, I welcome you to our space. We have been expecting you." Torvith stared at her. His bark-like skin was dry and cracking from stress. His golden eyes were clouded with exhaustion. He did not understand. "Expecting us?" he asked. "We did not announce our course. We did not ask for permission. We simply ran out of other directions to go." Elena's smile did not waver. "We knew you would come eventually. Where else would you go? The Council abandoned you. We were the only ones who voted yes. But you left the Council. You have your own problems now. Surely you cannot afford to." "We can afford what we choose to afford," Elena said gently. "Come, let me show you something." She led him to a viewing port. In the distance, visible only as a small blue dot, was a world. It was not large. It was not beautiful, but it was real. "That is New Haven," Elena explained. 6 months ago, it was an empty rock. We have built temporary shelters for 2 million people. The climate is similar to your home world. The soil can be adapted for your crops. Our agricultural teams are waiting to help your farmers. Our engineers are ready to build permanent housing. Our teachers are learning your language so they can help your children adjust." Torvat's legs gave out. He would have fallen, but Elena caught him. She was small and soft, this human, but her grip was strong. He whispered. The word came out as a sob. "We have nothing. We cannot pay you. We cannot fight for you. We have nothing to offer but our gratitude." Elena helped him to a seat. She sat beside him, this powerful diplomat, and she spoke to him as if he were a friend. "You do not understand humans," she said. "The Council never understood us either. They thought we were weak because we cared about things that had no strategic value. They thought we were foolish because we helped others without demanding payment. They calculated our behavior and found it irrational. She looked out the viewing port at the blue world in the distance. But we are not irrational. We simply operate on different calculations. We believe that kindness has value. We believe that a society that abandons the helpless is a society that has already begun to die. We believe that the measure of strength is not what you can take, but what you can give. Orvith wiped his eyes. The council would call that naive. The council is falling apart, Alina replied. We are building something new. Within a week, the first Drexy landed on New Haven. They stepped out of their shuttles onto solid ground and wept. Children who had never known anything but ship corridors ran through open fields and screamed with joy. Old people knelt and touched the soil, unable to believe it was real. Human workers were everywhere. They had built simple houses with strong walls and warm heating. They had planted gardens with fast-growing vegetables. They had set up schools and hospitals and community centers. They asked nothing in return. Ambassador Torvith walked through the new settlement with Alina. Everywhere he looked, he saw humans working alongside Drexy. A human engineer was teaching a Drexy woman how to repair water purification systems. A human doctor was treating Drexy children for malnutrition. A human farmer was showing Drexy farmers how to adapt their traditional crops to the new soil. "Oh, this will cost you greatly," Torvith said. "The supplies, the workers, the time. Your people could be building things for themselves instead of helping us." Alina shrugged. "We will manage. But why do your people agree to this? Surely some of them resent the burden we represent." Alina stopped walking. She pointed to a group of human children who were playing with Drexy children. They were running and laughing, teaching each other games, learning each other's words. The sound of their mixed laughter echoed across the settlement. "Look at them," Alina said. "They do not see burden. They do not see strategic value. They see friends. They see family. That is what we are building here, Ambassador. Not an empire. Not an alliance of convenience. A family. Word of what happened spread across the galaxy. The Council tried to suppress the news, but information has a way of finding those who need it. Small species, overlooked species, species who had always been told they were not important enough to matter. Heard about the humans and the Drexy. The Merle were first. They were an insectoid species, small and numerous and considered pests by the greater powers. Their homeworld had been claimed by the Vorthani centuries ago. They lived in the shadows of their own planet, surviving on scraps. When they heard about New Haven, they sent a secret message to Earth. "We have heard what you did for the Drexy. We have nothing to offer. We are small and weak and unimportant, but we wish to learn. We wish to understand. Is there room in your family for species like us?" The human response was immediate. "There is always room. Come when you can. We will be waiting." Then came the Thessoni, the water breathers who ran the shipping lanes. Their young people were growing restless, disgusted by the Council's selfishness. They wanted something different. They wanted something better. They began moving to human space, one family at a time. The gentle giants of Corveth followed. They were peaceful farmers who had been bullied by the Vorthani for generations. They asked if they could bring seeds from their world, ancient crops that they wanted to share. The humans said yes. The Council watched all of this with growing alarm. They tried to stop the exodus. They threatened species who left. They promised rewards to species who stayed. But the flow continued. Not a flood, not yet, but a steady stream of the small and the overlooked and the forgotten. All moving toward human space, High Commander Vreth demanded an emergency council meeting. "The humans are stealing our people," he roared. "This is an act of war," Counselor Scytha spoke with cold precision. "They are stealing no one. They are simply offering something we never did. A choice, a welcome. A home? Then we must offer the same things. We must compete." Scytha's crystal form flickered with something that might have been sadness. "We cannot. We do not know how. We never learned." On New Haven, the Drexy planted their first forest. The seeds came from their homeworld, carried across 7 years of exile in small containers. The trees would take decades to grow. The Drexy planted them anyway. Human children helped dig the holes. Drexy elders blessed each seed. Together, two species who had nothing in common except their willingness to hope began building something that would outlast them all. Ambassador Torvith watched the planting ceremony with tears in his eyes. "What do you call this?" he asked Alina. "This thing you are building." "This family of species who help each other without counting the cost." Alina thought about it for a moment. "We do not have a name for it yet," she admitted. "We are making it up as we go along. But I think it might be called the future." 1 year after humanity left, the Galactic Council existed only in name. The Great Hall still stood. The crystal chandeliers still hung from the ceiling. The floating platforms still held delegates from hundreds of species. But the power was gone. The authority was gone. The respect that had taken 10,000 years to build had evaporated like water in a desert sun. Admiral Greth of the Vorthani stood on his flagship and looked out at his mighty fleet. 10,000 warships, the largest military force in the galaxy. Any one of them could destroy a planet. Together, they could conquer any enemy. But there was no enemy to conquer. The fleet had not moved in 6 months. Not because of cowardice or lack of will. Because of paperwork. The great Admiral Kreth, conqueror of 12 star systems, spent his days filling out forms and arguing with supply officers about missing shipments. The problem was coordination. The Vorsani fleet needed fuel from the Siloth. It needed food from the Thessoni. It needed manufactured parts from the Crix. It needed 100 different things from 100 different species, all of whom had their own problems now, in the old days. Human logistics coordinators had kept everything running smoothly. They had known which shipments to prioritize. They had known how to negotiate with suppliers who were having bad days. They had known how to keep 10,000 ships fed and fueled and ready for war. Now, no one knew. Admiral Kreth received a message that his flagship's coffee machines had broken down. He tried to order replacement parts. The parts were manufactured by a small company on a real world. But the Merle had left Council space 3 months ago, following the humans to their new community. There were no replacement parts available. The mighty Admiral, terror of 12 systems, could not get his coffee machines fixed. He threw his datapad across the room and screamed with frustration. On the crystal world of Silith Prime, Counselor Scytha faced a crisis of faith. Her species had always believed in logic. Cold, clear, perfect logic. They made decisions based on calculations, not emotions. They measured value in numbers, not feelings. For 10,000 years, this approach had made them rich and powerful. Now their philosophers whispered dangerous questions. What if the humans were right? Asked one young crystal thinker. His name was Veth, and his ideas were spreading among the youth. What if empathy is not weakness but strategy? What if helping others is not waste but investment? What if the humans understood something about survival that we never learned? Scytha wanted to argue. She wanted to defend the old ways. But she looked at the data, and the data was clear. Human space was growing. Species were joining them every month. Their economy was expanding. Their people were happy. They had no military power worth mentioning, no great war fleets, no weapons of mass destruction. And yet they were winning. Council space was shrinking. Species were leaving. The economy was collapsing. They had all the weapons in the galaxy, and yet they were losing. The logic was clear. The Silith way did not work. The human way did. Scytha could not accept this. She could not admit that everything she believed was wrong. So she did what failing leaders always do. She blamed others. She punished dissenters. She refused to change. The young crystals began leaving for human space, one family at a time. The worst moment came when the plague hit. It started on a small agricultural world called Desha V, a new disease, something no one had seen before. It spread fast and killed faster. Within weeks, 3 systems were infected. Millions were sick. Hundreds of thousands were dead. The council called an emergency meeting. They needed to coordinate a response. They needed to share medical resources. They needed to quarantine infected worlds while researchers developed a cure. None of this happened. The Vorthane refused to close their borders because it would hurt trade. The Psyloth refused to share their medical databases because the information was proprietary. The Crix refused to accept refugees because they might carry infection. Everyone argued. No one agreed. The death toll climbed. Then the Merle made an announcement. The Merle were the small insectoid species that everyone had always ignored. They had left Council Space 6 months ago, joining humanity's growing community. In the time since, they had been working with human scientists on medical research. They had developed a cure for the plague. "We offer this cure freely to any species that needs it," the Emerald ambassador announced. "We ask nothing in return. We simply wish to help." The council was silent for a long moment. Then High Commander Vreth spoke. "We refuse," he said. "The Vorthani will not accept charity from pests. We will develop our own cure," Counselor Scytha agreed. "The Psylith will not be in debt to an inferior species. We will find our own solution." One by one, the council species refused the cure. Pride was more important than survival. Status was more important than saving lives. Millions more died. The breaking point came 3 months later. The agricultural world of the Isha 7 declared independence. They had watched the council let their people die for the sake of pride. They wanted no more part of such an institution. Other worlds followed. Corveth declared independence. The Outer Rim Coalition, 47 species representing a quarter of council space, announced they were leaving. They did not join humanity's community. Not yet. But they left the council, forming their own networks, their own trade agreements, their own futures. The galaxy was falling apart, not through war, but through something worse. Through irrelevance, High Commander Vreth called for military action. "We must force them to stay," he roared. "We must show them the consequences of defiance." But his fleet could not move. The supply lines were broken. Half his ships had no fuel. The other half had no ammunition. His targeting systems were still 3 months out of date. The mighty Vorsani military, terror of the galaxy, was a paper tiger. Counselor Scytha made a final decision. She resigned her position. She disbanded her staff. She walked away from the crystal halls of power that her family had occupied for 3,000 years. She booked passage on a cargo ship heading for human space. She did not announce her departure. She did not seek attention. She simply left. When she arrived at New Haven, the world where the Drexy had built their new home, she was met by Ambassador Alina Vasquez. "Counselor Scytha," Alina said, with no trace of gloating or victory. "Welcome. We are glad you are here." Scytha's crystal form was dull with shame. "I come with nothing. I represent no one. I am simply an old fool who finally understood the truth too late." Alina took her hand, the strange human gesture of connection. "It is never too late to learn," she said. "Come, let me show you what we are building. Perhaps you can help." Scytha walked through New Haven. She saw Drexy and humans and Merle and Thasani working together. She saw children of a dozen species playing together. She saw something she had never seen in 10,000 years of Galactic Council rule. She saw hope. "I have spent my whole life believing in logic," she said. "I calculated costs and benefits. I measured everything by its strategic value. I thought that was wisdom." Alina nodded. "And now?" Scytha looked at the setting sun, at the forests the Drexy had planted, at the homes the humans had built. "Now I understand that I was measuring the wrong things. I was counting coins when I should have been counting connections. I was calculating power when I should have been cultivating trust." She turned to Alina. "Will you teach me? Will you show me how to see the world as humans see it?" Alina smiled. "We are all still learning. But yes, we will learn together." Behind them, in the darkness of council space, the old order continued to crumble. But here, in the light of a new sun, something different was being born. 5 years had passed since humanity walked out of the Galactic Council, Ambassador. Alina Vasquez sat in a small garden outside the new assembly hall on Unity Station. Cherry blossom trees, transported from Earth, bloomed in carefully controlled soil. Drexy flowers, purple and gold, grew beside them. The Sani water gardens bubbled nearby. The garden was a small thing, just a few hundred square meters. But it held plants from 12 different worlds. Unity Station itself was a miracle of cooperation. It hung in neutral space, built by 20 species working together. Human engineers had designed the life support systems. Drexy construction workers had assembled the hull. Maril technicians had wired the electrical networks. Sealoth crystals donated by defectors from Council Space provided power and light. It was not beautiful by the old standards. It was not grand like the Council's Great Hall. It was practical and functional and slightly ugly. But it was theirs, built together, owned together, governed together. Alina was 70 years old now. Her hair had gone completely white. Her hand shook slightly when she held her teacup, but her eyes were still sharp, and her mind was still clear. She was waiting for a visitor. The shuttle arrived on schedule. When the door opened, Admiral Kreth of the Vorthani stepped out. He was alone, wearing simple clothes instead of his ceremonial armor. He looked smaller than Alina remembered. Smaller and older and very tired. "Ambassador Vasquez," he said. His voice was quiet, without its old thunder. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me." Lena gestured to a seat beside her in the garden. "Please, sit. Would you like some tea?" The Admiral, who had once commanded 10,000 warships, sat on a simple wooden bench and accepted a cup of tea. His hands shook, Alina noticed. "Worse than hers?" "The Vorsani Empire has collapsed," he said. The words came out flat, without emotion. "Our fleet is scattered. Our colonies have declared independence. The homeworld is ruled by 3 different factions, all fighting each other." Alina nodded. She had known this already. Everyone knew. "I am no longer," Admiral Kreth continued. "I am no longer anything. I am simply an old soldier who has lost everything." He looked at her with eyes that had seen too much. "I came to ask you a question. I need to understand. Ask, how did you know? When you walked out of the council 5 years ago, how did you know that everything would collapse? How did you know that we needed you so badly?" Alina sipped her tea. She thought about the question for a long moment before answering. "We did not know," she said finally. "We hoped. We believed. But we did not know for certain. We walked out because it was the right thing to do, not because we knew we would be proven right." Kreth frowned. "But surely you calculated the consequences. Surely you analyzed the strategic implications." "We are not Siloth," Alina said with a small smile. "We do not calculate everything. Sometimes we simply act because our hearts tell us to. The Council was going to let 14 million people die for the sake of convenience. We could not be part of that. So we left. But you knew we depended on you. You knew your people were essential to our systems. You knew some things would break. We did not know how much. And we did not leave to hurt you. We left because staying was hurting us. Every day that we watched the Council ignore suffering, a piece of our soul died. We left to save ourselves." Kreth stared at his teacup. Steam rose from the liquid, curling in the filtered air of the station. "I laughed at you," he said. "When you walked out, I laughed. I called you weak. I called you foolish. I said you would come crawling back within a month. I remember. I was wrong. About everything. About you. About power. About what makes a species strong." He looked up at her. "Will you teach me? Will you teach my people? We have nothing left to offer. We have no pride left to protect. We simply want to understand." Alina set down her teacup and took his hand. His skin was rough and hard, like armor plate. But underneath, she could feel his pulse, quick and uncertain. "There is always room to learn," she said. "But I must warn you. What we teach is not easy. It is not about strategy or calculation. It is about seeing other beings as real, as valuable, as worthy of love and care regardless of what they can offer you in return." "I do not know if I can learn that," Kreth admitted. "My whole life, I have measured worth by strength, by power, by usefulness. then you will have to unlearn those things. It will be hard. It will be painful. You will fail many times before you succeed. But if you are willing to try, we are willing to help. Kreth nodded slowly. I will try. 1 year later, the Galactic Assembly held its first full meeting. The hall was nothing like the Council's grand chamber. There were no floating platforms, no crystal chandeliers, no symbols of hierarchy and power. Just a large circular room with seats arranged in rings, every seat the same height. Every seat the same distance from the center. Representatives from 32 species sat in those seats. Humans and Drexy and Merle and Nessany, Sealoft defectors and Corveth farmers, former Vorthani soldiers and Crix engineers, species who had once been enemies, sat side by side. Learning to be neighbors, Councillor, Sitha, her crystal form now polished bright with new purpose, spoke first. This assembly has no permanent leaders, she announced. No species has more power than any other. Decisions are made together or not at all. We are here to cooperate, not to command. Ambassador Torvith of the Drexy spoke next. This assembly is built on a simple principle. When one of us suffers, we all help. When one of us succeeds, we all celebrate. We are not a collection of separate species. We are one community, one family, one future. Former Admiral Kreth, now simply Citizen Kreth, spoke last. I spent my life believing that power came from weapons, from fear, from domination. I was wrong. True power comes from trust, from connection, from the willingness to help others without asking what you will get in return. The humans taught me this. They taught all of us, and we are better for it. In the back of the chamber, Elena Vasquez watched with quiet pride. She was too old now for public speaking, too tired for the endless work of diplomacy. She had passed the torch to younger humans, to younger representatives of all species, but she had stayed for this moment, to see the thing she had hoped for finally come to life. After the meeting, a Drexy child approached her. The child was perhaps 10 years old, born on New Haven, one of the first generation to grow up in the new community. Excuse me, the child said. Are you Ambassador Vasquez? The one from the stories? Alina smiled. I am just Alina now. No more ambassador. Just an old woman who likes to garden. My teacher told us about you, the child said. She said you were the one who believed in us when no one else did. She said you walked out of the council because you knew we mattered. I walked out because it was right, because your lives have value, because no one should be abandoned just because they cannot offer something in return. The child thought about this for a moment. Is that what it means to be human? To believe that everyone matters? Alina knelt down, her old knees protesting, until she was at eye level with the child. Being human is not about species, she said. It is about choice. It is about deciding that kindness matters more than power. That connection matters more than conquest. That the measure of your strength is not what you can take, but what you can give. Anyone can be human, if they choose to be. The child smiled, showing teeth like polished wood. Then I want to be human too. Alina hugged the child. This small being from another world who had understood something that the greatest empires had missed. Welcome to the family, she whispered, 50 years later. The galaxy had changed beyond recognition. The old council was a memory, studied in history classes as an example of how not to build a civilization. The Vorthani homeworld had joined the assembly. Their warrior culture transformed into a tradition of protection and service. The Sylith had learned to balance logic with compassion. Species that had once been enemies now celebrated each other's holidays and raised each other's children in schools across 100 worlds. Children learned the story of the humans, not as conquerors or rulers, not as the greatest warriors or the most advanced civilization, but as the species that had taught the galaxy a different way. They learned about Ambassador Vasquez, who had walked out of the council when walking out was the hardest thing to do. They learned about Dr. Chen, who had chosen to grow food for refugees instead of medicine for empires. They learned about the small team of logistics coordinators who had kept the galaxy running. Not for money or power, but because they enjoyed the challenge. They learned that true strength was not about domination, it was about showing up for each other. It was about choosing kindness when cruelty was easier. It was about building something together that none could build alone. And in the garden on Unity Station, the cherry blossoms still bloomed every spring, their pink petals drifting down to mix with the purple and gold of Drexy flowers. A small reminder that the most powerful things in the universe are the ones that grow together always.